There's a small window on the east side of the 38th Street train station in Philadelphia. Not a fancy one, just a sheet of glass framed by metal, slightly foggy from years of breath and winter and stories. It faces the leading platform, half hidden between a newsstand and the smell of burnt coffee from behind the vending machine. People pass it every day, hundreds, maybe thousands, but most never notice the name etched in peeling white letters above it, lost and found. To most, it's just a place to get your wallet back. Maybe your phone, an umbrella. But for the people who stopped long enough to see what was happening behind that window, they'd tell you something else entirely. That window didn't just return things, it returned people. And the woman who sat behind it? She noticed what the rest of the world had forgotten to see. Her name was Darlene Henderson, but few ever asked. Most just called her ma'am, miss, or occasionally, excuse me. Every weekday for 12 years, she arrived 15 minutes before her shift started. She'd walk through the service entrance wearing her faded blue sweater with the loose button near the collar and a scarf patterned with tiny yellow flowers. She always brought two things with her: a plastic travel mug of chamomile tea and a brown leather notebook, soft from years of use, the corners slightly curled like aging paperbacks. She'd unlock the window, flip the sign to open, and settle into her chair, always with a sigh that sounded more like a ritual than fatigue. The station around her was in constant motion. Footsteps, suitcase wheels, announcements half heard and instantly forgotten. But inside her booth, everything moved slower. Deliberate. Gentle. People came and went. They'd say, "I lost my ID," or, "I think I left a duffel bag on the 940 to Trenton." Darlene smiled the same way every time, warm, steady, and not too wide. She never asked what they were rushing to. She asked only what they'd left behind. Darlene kept meticulous records. Not just the required logs, the ones with serial numbers and timestamps. She kept another log, a quiet one, personal, written in that old brown notebook. It didn't track the items, it tracked the people. She didn't write full names, just little things, details. Red scarf girl, kind voice, smiled even while crying. Man with newspaper hat, helped elderly woman who dropped her purse. Teen in hoodie, offered me his bagel, said I looked hungry. She wrote them down because they were moments. Tiny flickers of goodness in a world that moved too fast to remember them. And she remembered. Her coworker, Frank, thought it was silly. "You writing another novel in there, paper lady?" he'd grumble between sips of black coffee. Frank was a retired cop turned station security guard, rough-edged but not unkind. He didn't understand why Darlene took her job so seriously. To him, it was all about managing foot traffic and ensuring no one stole from the vending machines. Darlene would smile and say, "People leave more behind than they realize, Frank." He'd roll his eyes. But some nights, after his third patrol round, he'd find himself glancing through her window, watching her finish a note, her brow furrowed with quiet concentration. No one paid attention to her, not the way you'd notice someone important, but she didn't seem to mind. She liked the stillness. She liked the moments that came in between all the hurry, like how a man's shoulders dropped when he was told his lost wedding ring had been found, or how a woman hugged her purse like a newborn after 2 days of panic, or the way a young boy smiled when she said his drawing, folded inside a forgotten backpack, was beautiful. Darlene sat at her little desk behind the glass every day, watching the world pass by, and every day she paid attention to the people the world didn't have time for. That was her job, and in her mind that was enough. Until the day came when one of her letters didn't just bring something back, it saved someone's life. Most people think they only lose objects, wallets, phones, umbrellas, coats, but Darlene knew better. they lost memories, they lost moments. Sometimes they lost pieces of themselves. In her 12 years at the Lost and Found, Darlene had seen almost everything. A velvet box with a wedding ring still inside. A baby shoe. Only one. A manila folder full of divorce papers. A college diploma in a cracked frame. A lunchbox with a note from a child's mother that simply read, "You're stronger than you think." Each item came with a story, but most of those stories were never told. People came in breathless, embarrassed, frustrated. They wanted their stuff, not small talk. But Darlene always noticed. She saw the tremble in a man's hands when he asked about a Bible he left on the platform. She heard the silence in a woman's voice when she asked for her son's backpack. She felt the ache in the way people touched what was returned, holding it like it was something more than just a thing. And sometimes, just sometimes, if she had an address, and if the feeling was strong enough, Darlene would write a letter. Not a formal one, not just "we found your item," but something else. Something deeper. Something like, "You left your notebook. I saw the poems inside. I hope you keep writing. The world needs more of that." Or, "Your son's backpack is safe with us. I noticed how gently he spoke to his little sister. He's going to be a wonderful big brother. Just thought you should know." Most people never responded, but Darlene didn't need them to. She wasn't writing to get noticed. She was writing to remember, and maybe, just maybe, to remind people who they were when the world wasn't watching. On Tuesday morning, a young man came in, mid-20s. Hoodie zipped to the chin. Their eyes were sunken like he hadn't slept in days. He mumbled, "Left a bag here, black, laptop and books inside." Darlene nodded and retrieved it. "Are you Ben Carter?" He hesitated. "Yeah." She placed the bag on the counter, then paused. She looked at him as she always did when something whispered to her gut. A heaviness, not in the body, but in the soul. "Long week?" she asked gently. He gave a half laugh, almost bitter. "Long year." She didn't press. She just handed him the bag with both hands and said, "I hope today's a little lighter." He blinked, looked at her for the first time, then nodded. That night, Darlene stayed late. The station lights buzzed overhead, and the janitor's cart rattled faintly in the distance. She opened her notebook and wrote, "Ben Carter, heavy eyes, gentle hands, carried books on grief. Said, 'It's been a long year. I hope he finds a reason to stay.'" She tore the page carefully, folded it into a small envelope, and placed it next to his bag. No return request, no signature. Just a single line handwritten on the outside. Just something to read later. Ben didn't open the envelope right away. He shoved it into the side pocket of his backpack, the way you do with things that feel confusing and unnecessary. He hadn't expected kindness that day. He hadn't expected anything at all. That morning, Ben had stood at the edge of his apartment's rooftop. Not because he wanted to fall, but because he couldn't find a reason to keep climbing. He had called no one. Left no note. Just drifted to the station on muscle memory, like a ghost in his body, realizing halfway through the commute that he'd forgotten his bag. The woman at the Lost and Found had looked at him like she saw more than just his name on the claim slip. Like she saw him. And that shook something loose. It was 3 days later when he finally opened the envelope. He sat on his couch, surrounded by silence, holding the letter like it might vanish if he blinked too hard. He read the words once, then again. Ben Carter, heavy eyes, gentle hands, carried books on grief. Said, "It's been a long year. I hope he finds a reason to stay." He read it a third time, and then he cried. Not the kind of tears you shed over movies or music, but the kind comes from some deep, locked place that hasn't been touched in years. Someone had seen him. It's not the broken version, not the numb one, the real one. The next morning, Ben returned to the station. He asked around, but no one at the ticket booths knew the name of the woman behind the lost and found. Only that she'd been there forever. So he left a note. To the woman behind the window, your letter saved me. I was going to leave this world, but your words reminded me that someone still sees the good in me. Thank you. Whoever you are, I'm still here. Long before Ben Carter, before the notebook was filled with names, before the habit of folding letters by lamplight, there was a boy, maybe 6, 7 at most, skinny legs, bright eyes, wearing a red hoodie 2 sizes too big. He was crying. Darlene saw him from across the station one rainy afternoon about 8 years ago. He was standing near a bench, arms outstretched, as if something had been ripped away. People hurried past, umbrellas snapping, feet splashing. No one stopped, except her. She walked over slowly, squatting to meet his eyes. You lose something, sweetheart? He nodded, pointing. Teddy, he fell, I think, under the train. Teddy came out like a breath, not a name. And that was when she understood it wasn't just a toy, it was the only thing that made the world make sense to that little boy. Darlene didn't hesitate. She called security, spoke to the train operator, delayed departures, crawled beneath the edge of the platform on her knees. 10 minutes turned to 20, then 40. Her sweater was soaked, her knees scraped, her glasses fogged, but she found him. The bear was ragged, damp, and one eye missing. But it was Teddy, and that's all that mattered. When she returned it to the boy, he gasped, then hugged her so tightly it stole her breath. Thank you, he whispered. You saved him. Darlene went home that night with wet socks and aching hands, and for the first time in nearly a year she didn't cry when she passed the room that used to belong to her son. He would have been 8 if the fever hadn't taken him. That was the first time Darlene wrote in a notebook again. She didn't write about pain. She wrote, Boy in red hoodie. Hugged like he meant it. Said I saved something. Maybe he saved something in me too. And that was where it all began. Frank had worked as security at the station for 9 years. He liked coffee black, his boots clean, and his silence uninterrupted. He didn't believe in soft. Not in this city. Not in this job. He had been a beat cop for over 20 years, patrolling streets where people didn't say thank you, and kindness was a coin you rarely got back. So when he first met Darlene, he didn't think much of her. Just another nice old lady, he'd said. Nice didn't mean anything to Frank. Nice got you taken advantage of. But she was different. Every day, she nodded at him. She baked an extra muffin every week and left it on the break room counter with a Post-it. For Frank, if he's not too grumpy today. She'd chuckle every time he cursed under his breath but never judged. And slowly, annoyingly, Frank started noticing things. Like how she spoke softer to kids. Like how she always walked a little faster when someone looked lost. Like how she folded every returned scarf neatly, even though no one asked. He never admitted it, but made rounds past the lost and found more often than protocol required. Then, one day, he came in early and found her asleep in her chair. Her head rested against the glass, the sunlight glowing through the window like a spotlight. In her lap, the brown notebook was open. Frank wasn't the curious type, but something tugged at him. He glanced at the page. Frank, loud, stubborn, but continually watches the exits twice. Probably cares more than he lets on. I hope he learns to say that out loud someday. He closed the notebook quietly, didn't speak of it. But that night he called his daughter for the first time in decades, just to hear her voice. Frank never mentioned the note. Not to her, not to anyone. But the next morning, when he walked past the desk, he said something he'd never said before. "Morning, Darlene." She looked up, surprised, then smiled. "Morning, Frank." He didn't stay long, just enough to leave a muffin on the counter. It had a post-it on it, scrawled in sharp handwriting, clearly unused to kindness. "You make the station better. Don't argue." Wednesday came like any other day. The trains screeched in on time. The announcements echoed through the station. The coffee machine hissed like it always did, but Darlene wasn't at her desk. Her window was dark. The sign still said closed, and for the first time in 12 years there was no familiar scarf hanging from the coat hook, no warm tea sitting by the corner, no smile behind the glass. At first, no one thought much of it. People got sick, took a day off. But then Thursday came, then Friday. Still no Darlene. Frank tried calling the staff number he had for her. No answer. Maya asked around. The manager only shrugged. She said something about her health, didn't want a fuss. It felt wrong. Maya wasn't used to silence in that corner of the station. Even Darlene's quiet had a kind of presence, a warmth. So, when asked to temporarily cover the lost and found, Maya stepped in without hesitation. She wanted to be where Darlene had been, and that's when she found it. There was a brown notebook in the bottom drawer beneath a folder labeled Unclaimed 2017. Frayed edges, tea stains. A dried flower is pressed between the last two pages. Maya flipped it open. Her breath caught. It wasn't inventory, it was people. Hundreds of names, descriptions, tiny moments. Elderly man in gray coat. Always gives a peppermint to the cleaner. I hope someone gives him one back. Girl with chipped nail polish. Dropped her wallet but returned someone else's later that day. She's better than she believes. Maya, observant, listens before she speaks. Rare. I hope the world doesn't rush her. Maya blinked hard. She didn't remember Darlene ever writing her name. There were letters, too, neatly folded, some addressed, some not. Each one is a message of hope, a memory held. She found one for Ben Carter, the man who'd returned last week, eyes shining with tears. The letter had a copy still tucked in the back of the notebook. If you're reading this, Ben, you're still here. That's more than most people realize they can be proud of. Maya closed the book and sat in Darlene's chair. She looked through the window, the one that had framed Darlene's life for over a decade. And suddenly, she felt it. What that window was. Not a place where things were returned, but a place where people were reminded of who they truly were. The next morning, Maya did something Darlene had never done. She opened the window, but not just physically. She placed the notebook, open to face outward, for people to read. She labeled it, What She Saw in You. And people began to stop. First, it was a woman in a business suit. She read a line, gasped, then smiled. Then a man with tired eyes picked up a letter that said, You always thank the janitor. That's more powerful than you know. Word spread faster than Maya expected. By lunch, a crowd had gathered. By evening, someone had posted a photo online. The caption simply read, She saw what we forgot in ourselves. It went viral overnight. Frank came by, of course. Grumbled something about crowds blocking the platform. But when Maya handed him the notebook, he didn't push it away. He flipped to a page with his name. And for a long time he just stood there, silently reading it. Then, without saying a word, he pulled something from his pocket. A muffin, still warm. He left it on the counter, with a new post-it, for Darlene, wherever she is. That night, Maya took the notebook home. She reread every page, slowly, carefully. It was a history of humanity scribbled in quiet ink. Not the grand gestures, just the tiny ones. The ones that get missed, the ones that make all the difference. And somewhere between the pages, Maya found her own story reflected. Not in big bold letters, but in the same gentle handwriting Darlene used for everyone else. Maya, observant, listens before she speaks, rare. I hope the world doesn't rush her. She didn't cry, not at first. She just sat very still, hands resting on the leather cover. Because for the first time in her life, Maya felt seen entirely, not for what she did, but for who she was. And in that moment she knew exactly what she had to do next. He came back just after 9 a.m., same hoodie, same hollow eyes, only now filled with something new. Purpose. Ben Carter didn't expect anyone to recognize him. He'd barely recognized himself 2 weeks ago, but when he stepped into the station, Maya smiled and looked up from the desk. "You're Ben," she said gently. He nodded. I don't even know what I'm doing here, to be honest." "You're here," she said. "That's enough." He stood there awkwardly, then asked, "The woman, Darlene, is she okay?" Maya hesitated. She left, quietly, said it was time to rest. "We're not sure where exactly." Ben nodded slowly. "I didn't get to thank her." He pulled something from his jacket. A letter, handwritten, folded neatly. "I wrote this, in case she ever comes back. Can you keep it for her?" Maya took it carefully. She placed it on the corner of the window, exactly where Darlene used to place her letters before sealing them. "I was going to disappear, you know," Ben said suddenly, voice low. "But she saw something in me I didn't know was still there." He looked through the glass. "She didn't save my life. She reminded me it was mine to keep." Maya smiled. "Would you be okay if I shared your story?" Ben hesitated, then nodded. "If it helps someone else the way she helped me, do it." By that afternoon, Maya had posted the whole story. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't use hashtags or filters. She just wrote, "This is Ben." He came back to say thank you to a woman who noticed him when no one else did. Her name was Darlene. She worked at the Lost and Found desk for 12 years. She wrote letters to strangers. She never asked for thanks. She just hoped people stayed. The post exploded. Thousands of shares, tens of thousands of likes. Comments poured in from people across the country. "I wish I had someone like her when I was younger." "Is this real? Can I write a letter for someone too?" "Tell Ben he's not alone. Ever." And most importantly, where can we send a thank you to Darlene? Frank watched it unfold like a man who'd stumbled into the middle of a parade he didn't sign up for. But he couldn't deny the truth. Darlene had touched lives. Quietly, relentlessly. And now, those lives were speaking up. The manager of the train station was the first to call. "This is becoming a thing," he said, scratching his head as Maya stood in his office. He gestured to the dozens of envelopes arriving daily. Cards, drawings, letters, all addressed to the lady at the window. The second call came from the city council, then a journalist, then the mayor's office, and suddenly the minor Lost and Found desk was no longer a quiet corner. It was a movement made of ordinary people doing one extraordinary thing: noticing. Maya proposed something simple. "We don't need a statue or a speech," she said. "We need a place where people can keep what she started." And so, 1 week later, just below the dusty sign that once read "Lost and Found," a new plaque was mounted. Darlene's window. Where lost things and people find their way back. Beneath it, a new drop box was placed. "Leave a kind letter for someone you don't know." They called it the Kindness Ledger. The first letter dropped was Maya's, then Frank's, then Ben's. Within 2 days, the box was full. Frank still made his rounds, still grumbled at people who blocked the walkways, but now he paused at the window a little longer. He didn't say much, just stood there, looking through the glass. Sometimes, when no one was around, he whispered, "Hope you're seeing this, paper lady," and walked away with his shoulders a little lighter. In a quiet room a few towns away, Darlene sat by her window, the real kind, with trees outside, birds, wind. She sipped tea slowly and held the brown notebook in her lap, then smiled. She didn't need a headline. She didn't need applause. She just needed to know the window stayed open. And it had. Maya had always been good with systems, spreadsheets and schedules, organizing inventory. But writing, that was Darlene's magic. Still, something had changed. Ever since she found the notebook, ever since the letters started flooding in, she'd read dozens, some funny, some heartbreaking. A few were just one line. Others filled entire pages. But one thing was always the same. They came from people who had been seen. That Monday, as the morning rush spilled into the station, Maya sat at the lost and found desk, no longer temporary or filling in. She was the one behind the window now, and a blank journal sat in her drawer beside a fresh box of tea. Brown leather, unmarked. She opened it, wrote the date in the corner, and paused. Then, carefully, she wrote, "Today, a man in a blue coat waited 10 minutes to return a scarf that wasn't his. He said he didn't want someone to be cold tonight. I hope that kindness circles back to him someday." She smiled, folded the page into an envelope, left it, face up, on the desk. Her first letter. That same day, a teenage girl picked it up. "Please read it." Then turned to Maya and whispered, "Do you think I could write one too?" Maya nodded and handed her a pen. By the end of the week were 37 letters in the new box. A month later, over 300. And behind the glass, Maya kept writing. One moment at a time. Just like Darlene did. They never did find out exactly where Darlene went. She left no forwarding address, no farewell. Just a small card was mailed to the station 6 months later. It read, "To everyone who walked past my window, thank you for proving that kindness still matters." I didn't fix anything. I just noticed. Please, keep noticing. No signature, just a tiny pressed flower inside. These days, the station runs as it always has. Trains come, trains go, people rush by, but more of them stop now. They stop to read, to write, to leave a message for someone they'll never meet. The kindness ledger is now in stations in 5 cities, soon to be more. Darlene's story was never about a miracle. It was about a decision. To stay kind, to look closely, to believe that even the most minor note can echo in someone's life. Because brilliance doesn't need a stage, and compassion doesn't need permission. Sometimes the most powerful voice in the world is the one behind a dusty window, whispering, "I see you. I hope you stay."